Oil back near 100, $4 gas, a fixture we're told soon. And despite all of that, D.C. saying that it really can't afford to go green. The District of Washington, D.C. nixing an idea to pay thousands of dollars in green incentives to homeowners who go green. Residents now being told they will not be reimbursed for installing things like solar panels on their property because of a budget shortfall. Chris Horner says the government should take a lesson here. Is that really true, Chris? So in other words, they've gone to the trouble of doing this under the notion that they're going to get a credit or a check from their government. It isn't happening. Explain.
Not really a sympathetic party involved here where people are rushing to have their neighbors and their children pay for what amounts to not much more than an upper middle class street side gesture. These things will never pay for themselves, and the idea that the state should pick up whatever it is, half of the project cost, which is required, is, of course, not just bad policy, but it's horrible economics. Required by whom, Chris?
Required by whom?
I'm sorry?
Required by whom?
No. Well, the localities, when they say that we'll rob Peter to pay Paul for these ideas because the politics decide what sort of energy should be used. Take a lesson indeed. Remember, the most instructive thing here is that the president said 8 times, look at Spain. That's what we're trying to do with these schemes. He no longer says that because we exposed what happened in Spain. Ponzi had nothing on these guys. Sometimes Mr. Ponzi doesn't even show bugs out before the second round of financing, which we saw here in D.C. Default is the default position of any program designed to underwrite the spectacularly uneconomic. So these guys who got stuck holding the bag after the music stopped, I do feel a little bit for them, but it's sort of like Delta House here. You messed up. You trusted me.
Well, that's not a bad analogy, but I'm wondering, when people were told that they were going to get cash back for putting up solar panels or getting green batteries or any of this other stuff, the understanding was that Uncle Sam would fork over the dough. In a lot of municipalities and states and districts, as in D.C., the local authorities were kicking up to half in, and they're opting their half out, right?
Right. D.C. went through a grant program, and there's one benefit. You can subsidize the installation of these things. You can have a feed-in tariff. You can mandate, which is what D.C. is now considering. You can have mandates making businesses, as if it weren't inhospitable enough to be a business there. But D.C. went for a grant program because you can pull the plug anytime you want. A tax credit is an obligation. A grant is, if they want to pull the plug, they pull the plug. And again, default is the default position here. This was not an unexpected consequence. It was just an unpleasant one for some who found themselves still standing when the music stopped.
So in other words, they get the grant
when you ran out of other people's money.
I'm sorry, but they get the grant from Uncle Sam, and then they end up using that money for any other purpose but the one for which it was intended, right?
This is Washington, D.C., where they say they need an enormous injection of federal taxpayer cash every year for the, wait for it, cost of being the biggest tourist attraction in the country. They make out very well being Washington, D.C. They are a welfare case. This is how welfare cases behave.
But I'm wondering, Chris, if this is happening in D.C., where, as you say, the draw just on the basis of where it is and what it is.
It's happening all over Europe,
right?
Neil.
Well,
it's
that's
happening in Holland. It's happening in France, Spain,
so I'm wondering
Germany,
about other
UK.
states that, let's say you live in Colorado and you're expecting to get reimbursed at a local level for doing the same sort of thing. This might be a preview of coming attractions, right?
What happened in Europe is going to happen in the United States. What happened in Washington, D.C. is going to happen in other localities. Pay attention. Be very wary of this. It's a gesture for the upper middle class. Still be very wary.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. I think.
Thank you, Neil.